2 years ago, my girlfriend Iris Beckett rushed to marry my comatose brother Caleb after his motorcycle accident. She claimed it was true love and that she wanted to honor their connection. My family praised her loyalty while treating me like the jealous, selfish brother who couldn't support her noble sacrifice. She moved into the family estate, took control of what everyone believed was Caleb's inheritance, and slowly pushed me out of my own home. For 18 months, I watched her play the devoted wife while she spent his money and made decisions about his properties. She even convinced my parents to give her power of attorney over the family business. But yesterday, Caleb woke up. And today, Iris discovered the truth that I'd been hiding all along. None of it was ever his. Inheritance, the real money, the real power, it was all mine. And I have the documents to prove it. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you. Make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Before my brother's accident turned my world upside down, I was living what most people would consider a perfect life. At 28, I had quietly built myself into the invisible powerhouse behind Thornfield Manufacturing, one of the most successful industrial companies in the Pacific Northwest. While everyone in Blackwater City assumed my older brother Caleb was the golden heir apparent, I had spent the better part of 8 years orchestrating my own destiny from the shadows. The Thornfield name carried weight in our city. My grandfather, Theodore Thornfield, had built the company from nothing in the 1960s, starting with a single machine shop in what was then the rundown warehouse district. By the time my father took over in the 1990s, Thornfield Manufacturing had become the largest employer in Blackwater City, specializing in precision automotive parts and industrial equipment. The sprawling facility in the Blackwater Industrial District employed over 2,000 people and generated annual revenues exceeding $150 million. But what nobody knew, not my parents, not my brother, not even my girlfriend Iris, was that I had been my grandfather's secret protege for nearly a decade. While everyone else saw me as Owen Hayes, the younger son, I had legally changed my name to Owen Thornfield in 2020 and had been systematically positioned to inherit everything. My grandfather had recognized something in me that others missed. The strategic mind and ruthless business acumen that Caleb, for all his charm and popularity, simply lacked. I had started working at Thornfield Manufacturing during my sophomore year of college, initially in the mailroom and later rotating through every department. While Caleb spent his weekends partying and his summers traveling Europe, I was learning the intricate details of supply chain management, contract negotiation, and international trade regulations. By the time I graduated with my MBA from Seattle Pacific University, I had already identified 12 different ways to streamline operations and increase profitability by 30%. My grandfather had been quietly grooming me through private weekly meetings in his study at the family estate in Willowbrook Heights. These sessions, which we called business philosophy discussions, were actually intensive training in everything from hostile takeover defense to merger and acquisition strategy. He taught me how to read people, how to identify opportunities that others missed, and most importantly, how to play the long game. The estate itself was a testament to our family's success. The 15,000 square foot mansion sat on 40 acres of perfectly manicured grounds, complete with a private lake, tennis court, and a 6-car garage that housed my grandfather's collection of vintage automobiles. The house had been featured in Architectural Digest twice and was valued at over $8 million. But more than its monetary worth, it represented 3 generations of Thornfield legacy. A legacy that everyone assumed would pass to Caleb. What made my situation even more complex was my relationship with Iris Beckett. We had been together for 2 years, and I genuinely believed I had found my life partner. Iris was brilliant, ambitious, and absolutely stunning. She had graduated summa cum laude from University of Washington with a degree in marketing and communications, and she had quickly risen through the ranks at Thornfield Manufacturing to become our senior marketing coordinator. Iris understood the business world in a way that impressed even my grandfather. She could analyze market trends, develop compelling brand strategies, and navigate office politics with remarkable skill. More importantly, she seemed to see potential in me that others overlooked, while my parents and brother still treated me like the little brother. Iris recognized my intelligence and business acumen. Our relationship had deepened significantly over the past year. We spent countless evenings in my private office at the estate, working on expansion plans and discussing our vision for the company's future. Iris had been instrumental in developing our international marketing strategy, and she had personally negotiated 3 major contracts with European distributors. She often joked about being the future Mrs. Thornfield, and seemed genuinely excited about the life we were building together. I had even begun sharing some of my grandfather's business secrets with her. Not the full truth about the inheritance, that was still too sensitive, but enough to make her understand that I wasn't just the younger son marking time until Caleb took over. I showed her the subsidiary companies I had quietly established, the patents I had filed, and the strategic partnerships I had cultivated. She seemed impressed and supportive, often staying late to help me refine business proposals and analyze financial projections. The physical chemistry between us was undeniable, but it was our intellectual connection that made me believe we were meant to be together. Iris could debate corporate strategy for hours, and she had an intuitive understanding of market dynamics that complemented my analytical approach. We made a formidable team, and I had started seriously considering proposing. To her, my relationship with Caleb was complicated but generally positive. He was 3 years older, naturally charismatic, and had always been the family favorite. Caleb was the type of person who could walk into any room and immediately become the center of attention. He had a natural warmth and easy charm that made people gravitate toward him, qualities that I had never possessed, but Caleb had never shown serious interest in the family business. He enjoyed the lifestyle that came with being a Thornfield, the expensive cars, social status, the financial freedom, but he lacked the patience and attention to detail required for actual business management. He was more interested in his motorcycle club, his weekend adventures, and his rotating cast of girlfriends than in quarterly earnings, reports, or supply chain optimization. This difference in our interests had actually strengthened our relationship over the years. Since we weren't competing for the same things, we could maintain a genuine brotherly affection. Caleb was proud of my academic achievements and business success, while I admired his social skills and adventurous spirit. We complemented each other well, and I had always assumed that we would eventually work together to run the company, him as the public face and me as the operational brain. My parents, David and Catherine Thornfield, were successful in their own right, but had always been somewhat distant. They were the type of wealthy couple who measured their worth through social status and community standing. My mother served on the boards of several charities and spent most of her time organizing fundraising galas and cultural events. Had stepped back from day-to-day operations at Thornfield Manufacturing years ago, preferring to focus on his golf game and his collection of rare wines. They loved both Caleb and me, but in different ways. Caleb was their pride and joy, handsome, popular, and socially successful. I was their smart one, reliable, responsible, and academically accomplished. They appreciated my contributions to the family business, but they never seriously considered the possibility that I might be better suited to leadership than my older brother. What they didn't know was that their own father had been systematically preparing me to take over everything. My grandfather had recognized that Caleb, while likable, lacked the strategic thinking and work ethic required to successfully run a major corporation. He had seen too many family businesses destroyed by incompetent heirs, and he was determined not to let that happen to Thornfield Manufacturing. The secret meetings, the legal name change, the carefully structured inheritance plan, all of it had been designed to ensure that the company would remain in capable hands. My grandfather had planned to reveal the truth after his death, which we all assumed was still years away. Was only 73 and in excellent health, so there seemed to be plenty of time to gradually prepare the family for the transition. But life, as I was about to learn, has a way of forcing your hand when you least expect it. Everything I had built, everything I had planned, everything I believed about the people I loved, It was all about to be tested in ways I never could have imagined. Looking back now, I realized that this period represented the calm before the storm. I was confident in my abilities, secure in my relationships, and optimistic about the future. I had worked hard to earn my position, and I genuinely believed that my success was the result of merit and preparation. What I failed to recognize was that not everyone around me was as genuine as I believed them to be. The foundation I had built was solid, but it was about to be tested by forces I had never anticipated. And some of the people I trusted most were about to reveal their true nature in ways that would change everything forever. Everything changed on a rainy Thursday night in September, when I received the call that would shatter my carefully constructed world. It was 2:47 a.m., and the voice on the other end was clinical and urgent. "Mr. Hayes, this is Dr. Sarah Chen from Mercy General Hospital. Your brother Caleb has been in a serious motorcycle accident. You need to get here immediately." Preparing and narrating the story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I threw on clothes and drove through the empty streets of Blackwater City, my mind racing with possibilities. Caleb had been out celebrating a major client deal with his motorcycle club, something he did regularly. The wet roads on Highway 94 were notorious for accidents, especially late at night. When I arrived at the hospital, the news was devastating. Traumatic brain injury, induced coma, uncertain prognosis. The doctor said he might never wake up. While I stood in the ICU, staring at my brother's motionless form, surrounded by machines, I noticed something strange about Iris's behavior. Instead of comforting me or showing concern for our relationship, she was immediately focused on Caleb's medical charts, asking detailed questions about his legal status and long-term care requirements. When I tried to hold her hand, she pulled away, saying she needed to be strong for the family. Within 48 hours, something happened that I never could have anticipated. Iris made an announcement that left everyone stunned. She claimed that she and Caleb had been secretly seeing each other for months. According to her tearful confession, they had fallen in love, but kept their relationship hidden because they didn't want to hurt me. She said Caleb had proposed to her just 3 days before the accident. She wanted to honor their engagement by marrying him immediately. The speed and audacity of her lie was breathtaking. She produced a ring, one I had never seen before, and claimed it was the engagement ring Caleb had given her. She had text messages on her phone that allegedly showed their secret romance. Though I later realized these could have been easily fabricated, most convincing of all, she had an intimate knowledge of Caleb's preferences and habits that she had gained through our family gatherings and her position at the company. My parents were completely convinced by her performance. My mother actually cried when Iris told her story, saying it was the most beautiful example of true love she had ever witnessed. My father praised her loyalty and devotion, comparing her to the wives of fallen soldiers who honored their commitments despite tragedy. They expedited the legal process, and within 3 weeks, Iris became Mrs. Caleb Thornfield in a quiet ceremony at the hospital chapel. The wedding was surreal. Iris stood beside an unconscious man, tears streaming down her face as she pledged her love to someone who couldn't respond. The chaplain seemed uncomfortable with the situation, but my parents had convinced him it was a beautiful act of devotion. I watched from the back of the room, feeling like I was witnessing something fundamentally wrong but unable to articulate exactly what it was. Immediately after the ceremony, Iris began asserting her rights as Caleb's wife. She moved into the master bedroom at the Willowbrook Heights estate, claiming she needed to be close to their memories. She convinced my parents to give her power of attorney over what everyone believed were Caleb's assets, arguing that, as his wife, she was best positioned to manage his affairs while he recovered. My protests were dismissed as jealousy and bitterness. "Owen, you need to support your brother's wife," my mother said during one particularly heated family meeting. "Iris is family now, and she's sacrificing everything for Caleb. The least you can do is be gracious about it." Even my business colleagues at Thornfield Manufacturing began treating me differently. They started deferring to Iris's opinions and seeking her approval for decisions, assuming she now spoke for the heir apparent. She began attending executive meetings in Caleb's place, making strategic decisions about the company's future while I was gradually pushed to the sidelines. The most painful part was watching how quickly everyone accepted this new reality. Iris played her role perfectly, appearing at the hospital every day, posting touching messages on social media about her beloved husband, and making all the right statements about hoping and praying for his recovery. To the outside world, she was the devoted wife standing by her man in his darkest hour. But I was beginning to notice inconsistencies in her story. Small things at first. She couldn't remember details about supposed dates with Caleb she made, mistakes about his preferences, and she seemed surprisingly comfortable taking control of his finances. More troubling was her demeanor when she thought no one was watching. During family gatherings, I caught her looking at legal documents with an intensity that seemed more calculating than emotional. The breaking point came, exactly 8 months. After the wedding, on a cold Tuesday morning in May, I had spent the night at the office, working on quarterly reports and trying to maintain some semblance of my former role in the company. When I arrived at the estate to pick up some files from my old office, I found Iris waiting for me in the foyer, her expression cold and determined. "Owen, we need to talk," she said, leading me into what used to be my grandfather's study. The room that had once been the center of my business education was now clearly her domain. With her personal items scattered across the desk and her laptop open to financial spreadsheets, "I've been thinking about the living arrangements here," she continued, settling into my grandfather's chair with an air of ownership that made my blood run cold. "Now that I'm Caleb's wife and managing his affairs, I think it's time you found your own place. This house belongs to Caleb, and frankly, having you here is ... awkward." I stared at her, trying to process what I was hearing. "Iris, I've lived in this house for 28 years. I've contributed to every aspect of this family's business. You can't just..." "I can, and I am," she interrupted, her voice taking on a hardness I had never heard before. "Look, I know this is difficult for you, but you need to accept reality. Caleb is the heir. This is his house, and I'm his wife. You're the younger brother, and it's time you started acting like it." She stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the grounds with the satisfaction of someone surveying their domain. "I've already talked to your parents about this. They agree that it's time for you to establish your independence. There's a nice apartment complex in the Millbrook district that would be perfect for someone in your ... position." The casual cruelty of her words hit me like a physical blow. This woman, who had been my girlfriend just 8 months ago, was now treating me like an unwanted guest in my own home. She was wearing a designer dress that cost more than most people's monthly salary, paid for with money she believed belonged to my comatose brother. "And another thing," she continued, turning back to face me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I've been reviewing the expansion plans you were working on before Caleb's accident. I've decided to put them on hold. We need to focus on more conservative investments while he recovers. I'm sure you understand." That night, I sat in my car in the hospital parking lot, watching through the window as Iris performed her daily vigil beside Caleb's bed. But this time, I was really watching. She wasn't holding his hand or reading to him or showing any signs of genuine grief. Instead, she was on her phone, scrolling through what appeared to be real estate listings for vacation properties. The devoted wife act was just that, an act performed for anyone who might be watching. As I observed her calculated behavior, something clicked in my mind. This wasn't a woman torn apart by her husband's condition. This was someone who had gotten exactly what she wanted and was now planning how to enjoy it. The realization hit me like a lightning bolt. I had been living in a carefully constructed lie, and everyone around me had been manipulated into supporting it. I drove home, though. I realized it wouldn't be my home much longer and sat in my room, staring at the wall where I had hung my MBA diploma and various business awards. For the first time since the accident, I allowed myself to think clearly about what had actually happened. The timeline of Iris's supposed relationship with Caleb made no sense. Her immediate knowledge of legal procedures was suspicious. Her comfort with taking control of his finances was unusual for someone supposedly devastated by love. But the most damning realization was how perfectly everything had worked out for her. She had gone from being the girlfriend of the lesser brother to being the wife of the heir apparent in a matter of weeks. She had gained access to what she believed was a vast fortune, a mansion, and control over a major corporation. And she had done it all while being praised for her loyalty and devotion. I thought about my grandfather's training, his emphasis on reading people and recognizing opportunities that others missed. He had taught me to look for patterns, to trust my instincts, and to never accept surface appearances when deeper investigation was warranted. For the first time since the accident, I began to apply those lessons to my own situation. The next morning, I made a decision that would change everything. Instead of fighting Iris directly or trying to convince my family of her deception, I would do something far more strategic. I would let her believe she had one while I quietly gathered the evidence to destroy her completely. I called my grandfather's attorney and asked him to meet me at his office. It was time to learn the truth about the Thornfield inheritance. It was time to begin planning my counterattack. Instead of immediately revealing the truth about the inheritance, I made a calculated decision that would ultimately prove to be the most satisfying choice of my life. I decided to let Iris dig herself deeper into her web of deception while I systematically prepared for the most devastating revelation she could ever imagine. To everyone else, I appeared to be the defeated younger brother who had finally accepted his place in the family hierarchy. I moved out of the Willowbrook Heights estate without protest, renting a modest 2-bedroom apartment in the Millbrook district. The apartment was comfortable, but unremarkable, exactly the kind of place people would expect the lesser Thornfield son to live. I drove my old Honda Civic instead of the BMW I had been using. I started shopping at regular grocery stores instead of the upscale markets I had frequented before. But this apparent retreat was actually the beginning of my most strategic campaign. Every day, I meticulously documented Iris's actions as the supposed Mrs. Caleb Thornfield. I photographed every expensive purchase she made with what she believed was Caleb's money. I recorded every business decision she made in his name. I collected copies of every legal document she signed, claiming authority over assets that had never actually belonged to my brother. The private investigator I hired, former FBI agent named Patricia Stone, proved to be worth every penny of her substantial fee. Within 3 weeks, she had uncovered evidence that completely shattered any remaining doubt about Iris's true motives. The investigation revealed that Iris had been researching inheritance laws and marriage rights for months before Caleb's accident, not days. As she had claimed, Patricia discovered that Iris had consulted with a lawyer in the neighboring city of Crescent Falls, specifically asking about the legal process for marrying an incapacitated person and gaining control over their assets. Had researched the time limits for challenging such marriages, and had even looked into the specific requirements for obtaining power of attorney over someone in a coma. The secret relationship with Caleb was a complete fabrication, carefully constructed to justify her rapid marriage to an unconscious man. Even more damaging was the evidence that Iris had been systematically studying our family's financial situation. Long before the accident, she had accessed company records through her position in the marketing department, photographed documents from my father's home office during family gatherings, and had even befriended our family's accountant to gather information about the estate's structure. While Patricia gathered evidence of Iris's deception, I began preparing for the business transition that was always meant to happen. I reached out to the international contacts I had cultivated over the years, activated the patents I had filed under my own name, and began executing the expansion plans that Iris had foolishly put on hold. The subsidiary companies I had quietly established were already generating significant revenue, and I started consolidating these operations under a new corporate structure that would be completely independent of Thornfield Manufacturing. During this period, I also began spending more time at the hospital with Caleb. The neurologist had explained that coma patients could sometimes process auditory information even when they couldn't respond. So I started having long, one-sided conversations with my brother about what had happened. I told him about Iris's betrayal, about the inheritance truth that would soon be revealed, and about my plans for the future of our family's business. I know this is going to sound crazy when you wake up, I would tell him during these visits, but your wife isn't who she pretends to be. She married you for money that was never even yours to begin with. And when you're better, I'm going to make sure she faces the consequences for what she's done. Whether he could hear me or not, these conversations helped me clarify my own strategy. I wasn't just preparing to expose Iris's deception. I was preparing to reclaim my rightful position as the head of the Thornfield family and to ensure that justice was served for the months of manipulation and lies. The most challenging aspect of this period was watching my parents continue to praise Iris while treating me like an afterthought. At family dinners, they would spend entire conversations discussing how well Iris was handling everything and what a blessing it was that Caleb had found such a devoted wife. Meanwhile, they barely acknowledged my presence, clearly viewing me as the bitter younger brother who couldn't accept his reduced circumstances. But I knew that their perspective would change dramatically once the truth came out. I was building an airtight case that would not only expose Iris's systematic deception, but also demonstrate that I had always been the rightful heir to everything she had tried to steal. As the months passed, I watched Iris grow more comfortable and confident. In her role as the supposed Mrs. Caleb Thornfield, she began making increasingly bold decisions, spending larger amounts of money, and even started talking about expanding the family business in ways that would have horrified my grandfather. She had no idea that every move she made was being documented and would eventually be used as evidence against her. The waiting was difficult, but I knew that patience would ultimately make the revelation even more devastating. When the time came to expose the truth, I wanted to ensure that Iris had no possible way to deny her actions or minimize their significance. I was building a case that would completely destroy her credibility and ensure that she faced serious legal consequences for her fraud. Most importantly, I was preparing myself mentally and emotionally for the moment when I would reclaim my birthright and take my rightful place as the head of the Thornfield legacy. 18 months after the accident, I received the call that would change everything. Dr. Sarachin's voice was cautious but optimistic. "Owen, you need to get here immediately. Caleb is awake, and he's asking for you." I arrived at Mercy General Hospital within 20 minutes, my heart pounding with a mixture of relief and anticipation. This was the moment I had been preparing for, the moment when all of Iris's lies would finally collapse. As I walked through the familiar corridors toward Caleb's room, I could hear voices, Iris's voice specifically, high-pitched and emotional. When I entered the room, the scene was exactly what I had expected. Iris was seated beside Caleb's bed, gripping his hand tightly, tears streaming down her face as she performed her greatest acting role yet. She was wearing the diamond bracelet she had bought with his money just last week. And her designer dress probably cost more than most people's rent. "Darling, I'm so grateful you're awake," she was saying, her voice trembling with fabricated emotion. "I've been here every single day, waiting for you to come back to me. I never gave up hope that we would be together again." Caleb looked confused and disoriented, which was completely normal for someone emerging from a prolonged coma. But when his eyes met mine, I saw immediate recognition and relief. "Owen," he said weakly, "thank God you're here. I don't understand what's happening. This woman says she's my wife, but I don't remember, ... The moment I had been waiting for had finally arrived. Iris's face went pale as she realized that her entire deception was about to crumble. "Caleb, honey, you're just confused," she said. "Desperately. The doctor said you might have some memory issues. I'm Iris, your wife. We got married right after your accident. You proposed to me just days before the crash, remember?" "No," Caleb said firmly, his voice getting stronger with each word. "I never proposed to anyone. I don't even know you that well. Owen, what the hell's going on here?" I pulled out my phone and showed Caleb the carefully compiled evidence I had gathered over the past 18 months. Videos of Iris researching inheritance laws, recordings of her conversations with lawyers, documented proof of her systematic deception. As he watched, his expression shifted from confusion to anger to absolute disgust. "You married me while I was unconscious?" he whispered, staring at Iris with a mixture of horror and revulsion. You actually married someone in a coma? But I wasn't. Finished, this was my moment, and I was going to savor every second of it. There's something else you both need to know, I said, my voice calm and controlled. Something that's going to change everything. I had asked Thomas Hartwell, our family attorney, to be present for this moment. He entered the room carrying a thick folder of legal documents, his expression grave but professional. My parents, who had been called by the hospital, arrived just in time to witness what would become the most shocking revelation in our family's history. Before we go any further, I announced to the room, I think it's time everyone learned the truth about the Thornfield inheritance. Thomas cleared his throat and began reading from the sealed documents that had been prepared years earlier. According to the last will and testament of Theodore Thornfield, revised and legally sealed in 2019, the primary beneficiary and heir to Thornfield Manufacturing, the family estate in Willowbrook Heights, and all associated assets, is Owen Hayes Thornfield, following his legal name change in 2020. The room fell silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Iris's face went completely white, and she actually swayed in her chair as if she might faint. That's impossible, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Everyone knows Caleb is the heir. The whole family knows it. The business records show. I've been managing his inheritance for over a year. You've been managing my inheritance, I said, allowing myself a small smile. Every dollar you've spent, every decision you've made, every document you've signed, it was all based on a lie. Caleb was never the heir. I am. Thomas continued reading the legal details, explaining how my grandfather had quietly restructured the inheritance to ensure that the company would remain in capable hands. Caleb would receive a substantial trust fund and minority shares in the SCE company, but I held controlling interest and ownership of all primary assets. My parents looked stunned. My father actually sat down heavily in a chair, his face pale with shock. My mother kept looking back and forth between Caleb and me, as if she couldn't process what she was hearing. But it was Iris's reaction that made all the months of preparation worthwhile. She was hyperventilating, her hands shaking as she realized the full magnitude of what she had done. She had built her entire scheme on a fundamental misunderstanding of our family's financial structure. This means, she said slowly, her voice cracking, that everything I've been doing, the house, the money, the business decisions, was all ... It was all mine. I finished for her. And you've been committing fraud for the past 18 months. The revelation was complete. The truth was out, and justice was about to be served. The aftermath of the revelation was swift, decisive, and utterly devastating for Iris. Within 72 hours of Caleb's awakening, her carefully constructed world came crashing down around her with the force of a financial avalanche. The legal consequences alone were enough to destroy her, but it was the social and professional fallout that truly completed her downfall. Thomas Hartwell wasted no time in initiating legal proceedings against her. The charges were extensive and damning. Fraud, identity theft, forgery, embezzlement, and conspiracy to commit grand theft. Each document she had signed as Mrs. Caleb Thornfield. Each business decision she had made in his name. And each dollar she had spent from what she believed was his inheritance now became evidence of systematic criminal behavior. The marriage to Caleb was annulled within a week on grounds of fraud and misrepresentation. Since she had never had any legal right to marry him based on a fabricated relationship, the entire union was declared null and void. This meant that every action she had taken as his supposed wife was now legally invalid, including the power of attorney arrangements that had given her control over what she thought were his assets. The financial restitution was catastrophic for her. Every luxury purchase, every business expenditure, every investment she had made with my money had to be returned or compensated. The designer clothes, the expensive jewelry, the Caribbean vacation she had taken while claiming to be grieving. For her comatose husband, all of it had to be paid back. The total amount exceeded $400,000, money that Iris simply didn't have. But the legal consequences were only the beginning. The scandal destroyed her professional reputation completely. Word spread quickly through Blackwater City's business community about the woman who had married a comatose man to steal his inheritance. She was fired from her position at Thornfield Manufacturing within days of the revelation, and her professional references were essentially worthless. No reputable company would hire someone who had demonstrated such a complete lack of ethical boundaries. The social consequences were equally severe. The story made headlines in the local newspaper, and social media was merciless in its judgment. Iris became a pariah in our community, the subject of whispered conversations and pointed stares wherever she went. The friends and colleagues who had once admired her for her loyalty to Caleb now viewed her with disgust and contempt. My parents' reaction was, perhaps, the most emotionally complex aspect of the entire situation. They were simultaneously horrified by Iris's deception and ashamed of their own role in enabling it. My mother, who had praised Iris's devotion and criticized my supposed jealousy, was devastated by her own misjudgment. She came to me privately, tears streaming down her face, begging for forgiveness. "I was so wrong about everything," she sobbed. "I thought Iris was a saint, and I treated you like you were the problem. I can't believe I was so blind. Can you ever forgive me?" My father's apology was more reserved but equally heartfelt. "I've spent my whole life priding myself on being a good judge of character, and I failed spectacularly. You were right about Iris from the beginning, and we should have listened to you. I'm sorry for doubting you, and for making you feel like an outsider in your own family. I did forgive them eventually, but I made it clear that our relationships would never be quite the same. The experience had taught me valuable lessons about conditional love and the importance of standing up for yourself, even when everyone around you thinks you're wrong. My parents had chosen to believe a manipulative outsider over their own son. And while I could understand their reasoning, I couldn't simply forget the pain of that betrayal. Caleb's recovery was remarkable, both physically and emotionally. The neurologists had warned that he might suffer from cognitive impairment or personality changes. But within a month of waking up, he was essentially back to his normal self. The only lasting effects were occasional headaches and some short-term memory issues that gradually improved over time. His reaction to the entire situation was a mixture of disgust, anger, and ultimately relief. He was horrified that someone had married him without his knowledge or consent, and he was furious that Iris had manipulated our family so completely. But he was also relieved to learn that he wasn't expected to run the family business, something he had always dreaded. "Owen," he told me one evening as we sat in his hospital room, "I know this sounds terrible, but I'm actually grateful that this happened. Not the accident or the coma, obviously, but the part about you being the real heir. I never wanted the responsibility of running Thornfield Manufacturing. I was terrified that I would screw it up and destroy everything, Grandpa." Our relationship became stronger than it had ever been. The shared trauma of Iris's deception bonded us in a way that nothing else could have. Caleb understood now that I had never been trying to compete with him or take something that was rightfully his. Instead, I had been preparing to shoulder a burden that he had never wanted to carry. As for Iris herself, she made several desperate attempts to salvage the situation. She called me repeatedly, claiming that she had made a terrible mistake and that she had always loved me. She even showed up at my apartment one night, begging me to drop the charges and give her another chance. "I know I did something horrible," she pleaded, "but I did it because I loved you so much. I thought if I could secure your family's fortune, we could be together without worrying about money. I was doing it for us, Owen. Please, you have to believe me." But her words rang hollow after everything I had learned. The private investigator's evidence had shown that she had been planning this scheme for months, carefully studying our family's finances and legal vulnerabilities. There had been no grand passion or misguided love, just cold, calculating greed. I looked at this woman who had once been the center of my world, and I felt nothing but pity. "Iris," I said calmly, "you had everything you could have wanted. You had my love, my trust, and eventually you would have had my fortune. But you chose to gamble it all on a lie, and you lost everything." The legal proceedings took nearly a year to complete, but the outcome was exactly what I had hoped for. Iris was convicted on multiple charges and sentenced to 3 years in prison, followed by 5 years of probation. She was also ordered to pay full restitution, which would likely keep her in debt for the rest of her life. During this time, I focused on rebuilding my life and taking my rightful place as the head of the Thornfield family. I moved back into the estate in Willowbrook Heights. But I completely renovated the master suite and several other rooms that held unpleasant memories. I wanted the house to feel like mine, not like a place where I had been betrayed. Taking over Thornfield Manufacturing was surprisingly smooth. My grandfather's training had prepared me well, and many of the employees had always suspected that. I was being groomed for leadership. The expansion plans that I had developed and that Iris had foolishly put on hold were implemented immediately and proved to be highly successful. Within 2 years, company revenues had increased by 40%, and we had opened new facilities in 3 additional states. The international contracts I had negotiated proved to be particularly lucrative, and Thornfield Manufacturing became one of the largest employers in the Pacific Northwest. Caleb found his own path to happiness and success. He used his trust fund to open a custom motorcycle restoration shop in the Arts District of downtown Blackwater City. The business flourished, attracting customers from across the country who wanted his unique designs and expert craftsmanship. He was finally able to pursue his passion without the pressure of living up to family expectations. 2 years after the revelation, I met someone new. Dr. Amanda Parker was a veterinarian who had opened a practice near the Thornfield estate. She was intelligent, kind, and completely unimpressed by my wealth or family name. She fell in love with me when I was still dealing with the aftermath of the scandal. Represented everything that Iris had pretended to be: genuine, loyal, and interested in building something real together. We took our relationship slowly, and I was completely transparent about my past experiences. She understood my trust issues and never pressured me to move faster than I was comfortable with. Today, as I write this, Amanda and I have been married for 18 months. We live in the renovated estate, and we're expecting our first offspring. In the spring, I've learned to trust again, but more importantly, I've learned to trust my own judgment about people's character and motivations. The experience with Iris taught me that love without integrity is worthless, and that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable someone's destructive behavior. I learned that true strength isn't about fighting every battle, but about choosing which battles are worth fighting and then fighting them with everything you have. Caleb and I remain close, and our parents have worked hard to rebuild their relationships. With both of us, the family dinners are more honest now, and there's a deeper appreciation for the bonds that hold us together. We've all learned that trust, once broken, must be earned back through consistent actions, not just words. As for Iris, I heard that she was released from prison 8 months ago. She moved to another state and is apparently working as a waitress under her maiden name. I feel no satisfaction in her downfall, but I also feel no regret about the consequences she faced. She made her choices, and she had to live with the results. Sometimes, I wonder what would have happened if I had revealed the truth immediately after Caleb's accident. Would Iris have tried a different approach? My family have been more supportive, but I'm glad I waited. The experience taught me patience, strategic thinking, and the importance of building an airtight case before making your move. The most important lesson I learned is that sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's living well and building something better than what you lost. I didn't just get my inheritance back. I built an empire that exceeded my grandfather's wildest dreams. It didn't just expose Iris's lies. I found someone who loves me for who I am, not what I own. Today, Thornfield Manufacturing employs over 5,000 people and generates annual revenues exceeding $300 million. The company has won numerous awards for innovation and corporate responsibility. More importantly, it represents a legacy of integrity and hard work that I'm proud to pass on to future generations. The Thornfield name, which was nearly destroyed by greed and deception, is now stronger than ever. And I learned that the most valuable inheritance isn't money or property. It's the wisdom to recognize who deserves your trust and who doesn't. The late afternoon sun streamed through the windows of my grandfather's old study, casting long shadows across the mahogany desk where I now conducted the daily business of running Thornfield Manufacturing. But today, instead of reviewing quarterly reports or negotiating international contracts, I was doing something far more important, teaching my 3-year-old daughter Emma how to stack wooden blocks. "Higher, Daddy," she giggled, her small hands carefully placing another block on our precarious tower. "Make it touch the ceiling," Amanda watched from the doorway, her hand resting on her growing belly. At 6 months pregnant with our second offspring, she had that radiant glow that made her even more beautiful than the day I met her. "Don't let her talk you into building something that's going to fall on both of your heads," she said with a smile. "Trust me," I replied, steadying the tower as Emma added another block. I've learned the importance of building on solid foundations. It had been 5 years since the revelation that changed everything, and the life I had built since then exceeded even my most optimistic dreams. Thornfield Manufacturing had grown into a global enterprise with facilities across 3 continents. We employed over 8,000 people and generated annual revenues approaching $500 million. But more importantly, we had maintained the integrity and values that my grandfather had instilled in me. From the beginning, the company's success had brought recognition from business publications and industry organizations. Just last month, I had been invited to speak at Harvard Business School about strategic leadership and crisis management. It was surreal to think that the same story that had once been my personal nightmare was now being studied as a case example of patience, strategic thinking, and the importance of building authentic relationships. But the professional achievements, while satisfying, paled in comparison to the personal growth I had experienced. The betrayal that had once felt like the end of my world had actually been the beginning of my real life. It had taught me to trust my instincts, to value integrity over convenience, and to understand that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable someone's destructive behavior. My relationship with Amanda had been the greatest gift to emerge from that dark period. She had entered my life when I was still rebuilding my ability to trust, and she had patiently shown me what authentic love actually looked like. Unlike Iris, who had been attracted to what she thought I could give her, Amanda had fallen in love with who I was as a person. She had supported my dreams, challenged my thinking, and created a partnership based on mutual respect and genuine affection. Our wedding, 2 years after we met, had been everything that Iris's hospital ceremony had not been. It was a celebration of 2 people who had chosen each other freely, who understood each other's values, and who were committed to building something real together. My grandfather would have loved Amanda, and I often imagined him smiling as he watched our family grow. Caleb had found his own version of happiness and success. His motorcycle restoration business had become legendary in the custom bike community, attracting clients from around the world who wanted his unique artistic vision combined with his technical expertise. He had recently married Sarah, a designer who shared his passion for creative expression and adventure. Their relationship was built on shared interests and genuine compatibility. Rather than the manipulation and deception that had characterized Iris's schemes, my brother and I had grown closer than we had ever been. The experience had taught us both valuable lessons about family loyalty and the importance of looking beyond surface appearances. We had dinner together every Sunday, often joined by our parents, who had worked hard to rebuild their relationships with both of us. My parents had aged visibly during the aftermath of the revelation, clearly struggling with the guilt of how completely they had been deceived. But they had also shown remarkable resilience and a genuine commitment to learning from their mistakes. They had become deeply involved in their grandchildren's lives, and their love for Emma was pure and unconditional. They had learned to see past superficial charm and to value the consistency of character over the performance of devotion. The estate in Willowbrook Heights had been completely transformed. Amanda and I had renovated extensively, creating spaces that reflected our own tastes and values, rather than simply maintaining the traditions of previous generations. The house was now filled with laughter, creativity, and the warmth of a family that had chosen to build something positive together. We had also established the Theodore Thornfield Foundation, a charitable organization focused on supporting educational opportunities for young people from disadvantaged backgrounds. The foundation provided scholarships, mentorship programs, and business training, helping others develop the skills and confidence needed to create their own success stories. As for Iris, I had heard very little about her since her release from prison. Occasionally, someone would mention seeing her in another state, working under her maiden name and keeping a low profile. I felt no satisfaction in her struggles, but I also felt no regret about the consequences she had faced. She had made her choices, and she had received exactly what those choices had earned her. The most important lesson I had learned was that revenge is far less satisfying than simply living well. Instead of spending my energy on anger or bitterness, I had focused on building something better than what I had lost. I had created a business empire that exceeded my grandfather's vision, a family that was founded on love and authenticity, and a legacy that would benefit future generations. Emma's tower finally toppled, sending blocks scattering across the floor. Instead of being upset, she clapped her hands and immediately began gathering the pieces to start over. Again, Daddy, let's build it again. I looked at my daughter, this perfect little person who had never known anything but love and security, and I realized that this was the real victory. Not the business success or the legal justice or the public vindication, but the simple fact that she would grow up in a world where she understood her own worth and would never accept anything less than authentic love and respect. Absolutely, I said, helping her gather the blocks. But this time, let's make sure we build it on an even stronger foundation. As we began to rebuild, I reflected on the journey that had brought me to this moment. The betrayal that had once seemed like the worst thing that could happen to me had actually been the catalyst for creating the best life I could have imagined. Sometimes the most painful experiences are the ones that teach us the most valuable lessons about ourselves, about what really matters. The late afternoon sun continued to stream through the windows, casting new shadows as the light shifted. But in this house, in this family, in this life we had built together, there were no more secrets, no more lies, and no more betrayals. There was only the solid foundation of love, integrity, and the quiet satisfaction that comes from knowing you have built something worth keeping. And that, I realized, was the greatest inheritance of all. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.